Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack, back again to bring you our quick guide to Blackrook Hold for Season 3, 10.2 of Dragonflight. There's left and right sides to the beginning of this dungeon, but unlike in Legion where you could skip past these, you do need to kill one of these wings to be able to reach your trash percentage. Both left and right have their own challenges, and usually this is the first area that you want to Bloodlust in the instance, because you have these Soul Blade casters, amongst others, all over the beginning. We're going to cast these stacking magic debuffs onto your allies. Master Spell is very valuable here, as are a number of AoE stops, silences to be able to corral your enemies and lock them down quickly. But this is by far one of the hardest pulls in the dungeon because there's a number of things that cannot be kicked out on their own. The lieutenants that you're going to be fighting are also going to be replicating some of the mechanics that you are seeing. If you go down the left side, for example, they're going to cast the Soul Echoes, and I believe the right side is going to be throwing glaives and like scythes at players. The Soul Echo mechanic is going to be the exact same that you're going to see on the boss, as is the axe mechanic as well. The first boss is going to be this amalgamation of the souls, and it's going to combine those mechanics. So there's going to be throwing an axe scythe, which just got a new updated animation, so you're able to see it a little bit more clearly. But if you get hit by it, you almost certainly are going to be one shot because they buffed its damage since Legion. So it's not just going to knock you back, it's just going to kill you outright. The Soul Echoes are kind of similar to what you saw out of like a Harlan Suite and Freehold, where they will show the animation, but they explode like 2 or 3 seconds later. So the first one that comes out, you want to move immediately out of, then continue standing in that position until you see the first one explode, then step out, and then kind of pace the drops that you have for those Soul Echoes. That way, you're not going to be just kind of covering the entirety of the room and walking all over your allies. Watch for the frontal from the boss, and then the boss is going to move into the middle of the room, and souls are going to be moving into the middle to try to just merge with the boss. If they merge with the boss, then the boss's soul burst is going to hit even harder and possibly one-shot you. So you need to root, stun, knock back, and generally just kill all of these adds in this intermission phase while cleaving the boss. You can root them for an extended period of time, and eventually it'll time out and the boss will burst anyway, but you cannot like para them or cage them or fully like hard CC them forever or anything like that. So keep that in mind. Once you survive the soul burst, again, you should use every immunity, large defensive that you possibly can. The boss should go down soon afterwards as he just continues to repeat his mechanics. As you pull up the stairs, there's going to be a number of spiders that are stacking magic debuffs onto your tank and anybody else they melee. To make it easier, make sure your tank is going first, stopping, rallying together, and killing most of the small spiders before you go up to the top of the room, where you have to deal with casters, archers, and some of the rogues, some of the scouts that you have to deal with. Archers are probably the most deadly because the single target shots they have absolutely truck, and then they'll disengage out and start fanning out arrows onto everybody. So they're insanely deadly. The casters will increase in damage for each successive cast that they get off. So if you can just keep them locked down, they shouldn't be too threatening. The Scout's knife dance needs to be crowd controlled with stuns, disorients, and the like to make sure that they can stop those casts and reduce the overall party damage that they deal. And you have to watch out for the cat jumps, as they can cleave and stack a very nasty bleed. The second boss, Ilizana, has a Dark Rush, which is going to target 3 players, very similar to what we saw out of the Evoker boss in Aberrus. You want to make sure that you're positioning near the end of the wall, because in the path of the Dark Rush, she will also drop Fellfire onto the ground. So you want to make sure that since this fire lasts most of the fight, that you're positioning on the edges of the rooms, so that you have as much room to work with over the rest of the space. She'll then jump from one player to the next, and you need to quickly move out of the path of the fire that gets dropped. Glaive Toss is going to target one ally, and if anybody else is nearby, it's also going to jump to them. These bleeds are incredibly lengthy, and they can be cauterized by evokers, so make sure that you're trying to be spread out. You can use cauterize from the evoker, you can dwarf to remove it, you can bop it, you can use all kinds of different immunities to be able to get rid of this Glaive Toss. Just make sure it's not going to be in melee and cleaving everybody in the process. In the intermission phase, there's going to be a caster and one of the lieutenant adds. You want to make sure you're just killing and focusing down the caster first, so you don't have to sit there and kick it the rest of the instance, and make sure that you're tanking all these cleaves away from the rest of your group. Ranged players are going to get targeted by I-beams that they, again, need to be hiding along the edges of the room to conserve space. You go back into the first phase once again and rinse and repeat. After that boss, you have to dodge a lot of rocks running up the stairs. Once you reach the top of those stairs, the rocks will then stop. So if you're afraid of the rocks, take your time. This next hallway has a lot of tricksters who will drink nasty brews and spit fire and also buff themselves. Some of them can also be spinning, and you won't see a channeled cast from them, but you can use a stun or CC on them that will then interrupt this invisible channel and stop them from spinning. But if they are spinning and walk into you, they almost certainly will one-shot you. This is where you want to have a big AoE pull with a lot of stops to be able to shut down all of these like brews that they are going to be trying to drink. If they do end up getting them off, keep in mind they're like channeled frontals, and so you just need to make sure you're standing away from them and you're not having these frontals aimed at you. Your tank is constantly sort of like moving them off to the side. You can do a pretty good job kiting this pull if you have sufficient slows. That's something that we did back in the day. But overall, this is an area for very big AoE stops. You're going to go up the stairs to another round of boulders falling down, and this is where you enter the gauntlet. The demon lords that you cast are going to have sick bats, which cannot be interrupted, and it's going to target usually a ranged player, and all of the bats are going to fixate them, swarm them, and try to kill them as fast as they possibly can. AoE stuns, Ring of Peace, things like that are insanely valuable, but also you might just have to stand very far away as a ranged player, be prepared for that fixate, and then be ready to run. The Demon Lords are also going to cast Fell Frenzy, which increases their own damage. So a popular strat back in the day was being able to just tank it because tanks were insanely powerful and they would just like tank or kite these Fell Frenzies. I don't think it's going to be able to be possible anymore. Usually what we did is we pulled like 1 or 2 Demon Lords together at most, and then we pulled them into the third boss room with Smash Spite, and then we kited them around as needed if they got too buff. For Smash Spite, range want to make sure they're near the walls, and if you can, looking up into the sky to see where some of these fell bats are going to be dropping these lines. Ideally, they're going to be targeting you and sort of fixating you, and then dropping fire along the ground from their start position to you. And you have to make sure you're sort of reducing the amount of space that's going to get covered up over the course of the room. The fire doesn't deal tremendous amounts of damage on PTR right now, but that could change. It's ideal to make sure you're not getting knocked back from the boss's charge. He will charge or fixate one player, but others can intercept it. You'll take a moderate amount of damage the first time, but it gets like doubled every single time that you get hit by that charge. So making sure your tank is soaking a couple stacks, and then having other DPS with heavy defensives alternate so the tank can drop their stacks is usually going to be preferred. This final pull is going to feature swordsmen and lancers, which are going to be doing tons of tank damage with their coup de grace. They also have these raven dives, which are very difficult to see on this ground. It's a very large gray circle, but sometimes it gets hidden under carpets and under other pieces of furniture, so you need to make sure you keep on moving. But again, you can stop these with fears and other crowd controls to stop the stomps from actually happening. So the best practice for this has usually been to grab all of the mobs, bring them up into the final circular room before the boss room, and then cycle through AoE stuns while your DPS have large damage CDs rolling. And then you kind of just have to be running all over the room and making sure ranged in particular are not baiting any of these circles onto melee players. The melee can get the most uptime possible. You do want to make sure your tank has about every single defensive on hand because the damage they deal is absolutely tremendous, and they can really rock your tank if you're using a lot of AoE stuns because it resyncs the swing timer so the tank gets hit by all like 12 mobs all at the same time. So keep that in mind. The final boss starts off by fighting a Kurtalos, who's going to fire boomerangs at players. This is going to track them, so he'll start casting onto, let's say, the priest, and when he lets it go, that's where the boomerang is going to go to. So you want to make sure that when you are targeted by it, you move to the closest wall that Kurtalos is at, and then keep moving as he fires it at you, so that you can sidestep it, and then it's only going to hit a smaller space of the room, but it's always going to boomerang back and forth. You're also going to have the other boss firing off shadow bolts onto players. This can also double tap players. It is hitting insanely hard on PTR right now, and basically every 3 seconds or so, people are getting hit for like 70 or 80% of their life. So just like in Freehold, when you're having to deal with the random shot from the first boss, once you get hit by the first burst of it, that's where you want to hit a health pot or a defensive, usually a health pot, because you'll want to use your large defensives when you kill off Kurtalos and you move into the demon phase. The very first Shadow Bolt volley does obscene amounts of damage and leaves a dot. This Shadow Bolt volley, you need to use immunities in your largest defensives here to be able to mitigate it. And then after that, you gain a health, damage, healing bonus throughout the rest of the encounter so that the rest of the Shadow Bolt volleys are not going to be as intense, and then you want to save your defensives and health pots for the stinging swarm. This swarm is going to periodically stun you about every second. If you're a healer, you want to save your externals if you get targeted, because you're getting stunned or interrupted every second, and so trying to cast in power spells or even like flash heals onto yourself, very likely you're not going to be able to get them off, and you just need your DPS to save your life. Otherwise, it will kill you. Keep in mind that it can target the healers, and it will be incredibly, incredibly nasty. There are some sleep clouds around the room. If you take any damage, it'll instantly break you out of the sleep cloud, so you can dispel it, but if people still have the Shadowbolt Volley dot on them, they usually get instantly broken out of that as well. Just something to make sure you keep in mind. The demon is going to despawn from the room and start firing off a lot of void lines onto players, and you just need to run around it and keep on dodging the line, while also dodging the sleep clouds, because this is the area where the Shadowbolt Volley damage can wear off, and then you're not taking any damage, and then you need to get dispelled, or you'll then perish to the void lines. So make sure you dodge those beams, stay out of the sleep clouds, keep on killing the swarmers, and you should be able to get this dungeon down without a hitch. Hope this helps you guys out for Dragonflight Season 3, and if it did, be sure to subscribe to the channel and check out our live stream where we'll be streaming all kinds of high, M+, and raid content for healers. Thanks so much for watching, hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll catch you all next time.